It's time for episode 106 of The Crisis Show here on YouTube, on Google Hangouts, on Twitter. We put a link on LinkedIn and wherever else you have this link around the world. Good afternoon from New York. My name is Rich Klein. I'm president of Rich Klein Crisis Management and founder and host of The Crisis Show, now in its fourth year. Today, we are going to talk about that incident in Tennessee, as well as other incidents of workplace violence, with a really special guest, a good friend of mine. His name is Felix Nater, and he is probably one of the top experts in the nation on workplace violence. He does workplace violence prevention consulting, workplace security consulting, security awareness and training workshops, incident assessment and litigation support services, and so much more. He's written over 30 articles in national publications for people interested in this subject, a very important subject of workplace violence. So from Charlotte, North Carolina, welcome, Felix. How are you?
Hey, Rich. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. I have a lot of fun and I enjoy it.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
We always learn so much from you, and I hope our audience does as well.
Thank you.
Felix, you and I have done many shows on this subject because we both know that this is a subject of great importance to businesses around the world. But we also know, Felix, that many companies and organizations underestimate the importance of workplace violence prevention. So when I saw once again today the situation in Tennessee, outside of Nashville, by the way, thankfully nobody was killed. There were some minor injuries, and the police did a magnificent job. Kudos to them in getting there quickly and killing the shooter, the person who was threatening. With a machete and a gun, from what I understand. A lot of this is still preliminary, but we do know that no one is in any danger at this point, and that's the good news. But Felix, the hook for the show, of course, is the larger issue, because last week, tragically, 2 people were killed in Louisiana at a movie theater again. From your experience, they've been, and actually from your early career history, the idea of going postal and this postal office shootings, there were a series of them going back to 1986. So what I want to talk about today for our audience is some of the things that you think companies need to think about that they haven't thought about. And I want to also mention that I was looking and doing some research for the show. The examples of the kind of people that think about doing this. You made a good point in the green room about people not waking up one day and deciding to shoot up a place, if you will, but that there is a process, this early warning signal. So let's open the discussion with some of that, if you will.
Yeah, Rich, to your first point, the first thing that I really want the employees to understand is the value and the meaning of prevention. Threat assessment is not prevention. Incident management after the fact is not prevention. Responding to an active shooter is not prevention. That's all after the fact. So if they will develop an approach that is, I am going to train my workforce around policies that are proactive, they're robust, they're agile, and they're proactive, and they are specifically talking about things that we could do now that would help us recognize at-risk situations and help us recognize the threat before it becomes an at-risk situation for us that escalates to physical violence. That's prevention. Assessing someone who has a potential is after we recognize the person that has either threatened someone or has indications of wanting to harm someone. That's the threat assessment piece. So we've got to define and distinguish between all of those things I just talked about and focus in on prevention as being the proactive element necessary and essential for workplace violence prevention.
Okay, so, that's a great start. I wanted to draw our audience attention to something that I read that kind of will set up the rest of our show. This is a really nice document I found, and I have to squint to read it. It's the Maricopa Community Police, Maricopa Community College Department of Public Safety. They and as you said in the agreement, they're a pretty good organization. But I found one of their slides that I think really gets to the point that I've been trying to make to our audience today, which is this. Hold on one second.
Sure.
The point is that a lot of people, and a lot of lay people especially, think that workplace violence is limited to employee on employee crime, for instance, or
correct
employee and supervisor. And this slide really nailed it for me. I'm just want to read the 4 points, Felix, and have you talk about each one when I'm done. So the first one is the 4 types of workplace violence. The person committing the crime, number 1, has no relationship to the workplace, which may have been the case.
Right.
We don't know. Number 2 is the recipient of a service or other outside connection, a vendor. And the example there, Felix, would be somebody who's maybe whose mother or father was operated on at a hospital and somebody died and they went after the doctor or the nurses, right? Number 3, somebody who has an employment relationship, current or past. So they are disgruntled former employees, somebody who's been discriminated against and has a grievance. I guess that might go to some of those postal shootings that you're an expert in. And number 4 has a personal relationship with an employee. I guess that would be like domestic violence. Somebody going to girlfriend of their wife or ex or vice versa, right? So talk to me about, this movie theater shooting today, for example. I guess this one, I know things are early, but this could have been a random situation in terms of they chose a movie theater, right? Maybe copycat crime. I mean, help us here understand this one if you can.
Well, I don't know if I will be effective in helping you understand what went through that person's mind, but here's my problem with workplace violence prevention. Every organization that hires a person to do work, they should have a standing approach and procedures to workplace violence prevention that even includes what an employee should be doing to minimize their risk when something like this occurs in their workplace. So a movie theater, right? A warehouse, right? A shopping mall, any kind of a workplace setting, those employees should know what to do for their own risk minimization and for the risk of people that are nearby. So the movie theater employees probably had.
Could you hold on 1 second? We lost your video and audio for about 10 seconds. If you could just go back a little bit and repeat what you just said. A couple of sentences. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So what I'm saying is that these environments are all workplace settings for the people who work there. So the fact that the person has no direct connection, the fact that the person may be a former employee or a disgruntled employee is immaterial and irrelevant because the employees need to know what to do to minimize their own risk and to minimize the risk of others that happen to be on property. So talk to me. So oftentimes employers focus in on the employee threat when they should be looking at all the 4 categories that OSHA defines as the risk categories.
Okay, so what are you seeing in your work, Felix? You give a lot of talks, and I went to your great talk at Goldman Sachs earlier this year. What are you hearing from clients about their biggest concerns and where they're weak, and what are you telling them when you do these audits of? Because I know you go in there as an objective observer. What do you tell them? What have you identified as some of the holes in their planning, if you will, and prevention? Are there any common threads you see, big businesses and small businesses?
Excellent question. Let me answer it this way. There are 2 types of individuals that come to me after I do a talk, or 2 kinds of individuals that approach me about considering to hire me. There's the on the record who tells me all the wonderful things that they want to do, need to do, and have to do. Then there's the off the record. Oh my God, Mr. Nater, everything that you say is accurate, but I can't go with my boss and tell my boss of a potential problem that might require your services. Number 1, we already have a security director and that's his responsibility. Number 2, we've never really done an internal assessment to analyze and evaluate our own posture. So how do I go to my CEO and say, we need to hire a $50,000 security consultant to come in and help us develop a policy, assess the workplace, and come up with the things that me as the HR director and he or she as a security director are supposed to have their arms wrapped around? It's difficult, Rich.
Yeah.
Now, the ones that want it have a real good dialogue with their bosses. And the dialogue goes along the lines of this: prevention is worth a pound of cure. Whatever we do today is going to minimize our civil liability. It's going to enhance workplace production. The morale of the employees is going to go sky high. They're going to have trust and confidence in what we do. And guess what? If something goes wrong, we can take the witness stand as honorable men and women and testify to our honorable intentions.
Right.
That's how you sell the program.
Yeah, great point. I was just, when I was warming up for the show, there was just some interesting data about the cost of of workplace violence, billions of dollars a year to companies here in the United States alone, of course. And so much of that, I mean, there was a study released by the Workplace Violence Research Institute going back 10 years, April 95. It showed that workplace violence actually resulted in $36 billion in annual loss.
Absolutely.
According to the Bureau of Justice statistics, about 500,000 victims of violent crime in the workplace lose an estimated 1.8 million workdays each year.
That's right.
This is just some of the stats. This is a little bit data, but obviously it's still a big problem. I guess the good news is the bad news is we've had more incidents that are getting more media attention. And I guess the good news in that is there's more awareness. I mean, but I guess what I'm hearing from you is there's awareness to a point, maybe by watching the media, but in terms of turning that awareness into real concrete action is not what's happening.
Yeah. And I don't think that putting the cart before the horse is the right solution. I don't think that bringing in a guy like me to teach active shooter is workplace violence prevention. That is a failed workplace violence prevention program. When you call me in and you say, Mr. Nater, I'd like for you to help us develop and structure a workplace violence prevention program that deals with active shooter. I mean, that's not prevention. The problem as I see it is that you can't wrap your arms around prevention. It's like an insurance policy. You need it. It's going to be on the shelf when there's a problem for it. Size it. There's no way of wrapping your arms around an event before it happens. Whereas the active shooter, everybody loves that because it involves the physical involvement of people doing things. However, I submit to you, it's essential and critical and necessary, but part of a prevention program that says this is the outcome when we fail to be proactive, agile, and robust. That's the outcome. A disgruntled employee who we fail to recognize in those 5 phases of the active shooter stages, we fail to recognize the behavior, and now we're dealing with an active shooter. Now, in the case of the movie theater situation or a mall, our employees may not never ever get a chance to recognize the at-risk situation because it'll be alien to them and it'll happen so quickly. But at least the employees ought to know what to do to minimize.
Let me interrupt you. Why do you say that? You mentioned, you said, if I understood you correctly, retail and by the way, retail has the highest rate of homicides.
Yes.
Related to workplace violence. Very interesting, something I read earlier. But why is that true for
then healthcare? Healthcare is number 1 per capita. Okay. Yes.
Okay. Maybe that was an old stat I read. It was okay. I had it reversed in the way I read it. But why do you say that about malls and stores and retail and movie theaters?
It's me walking up to the cashier's window, Natalie dressed the way I am. I present myself very affably. I buy my ticket. I go into the bathroom. I don on my gear. I open the bag, take out my shotgun or my M16 or whatever I'm carrying, and I begin doing my dastardly deeds. What does an employee know about reacting to that immediate threat, other than just to take risk minimization measures to reduce his or her risk? Because that's an alien situation. That's someone that's not known to the workplace. And so that person coming in isn't going to indicate their intentions. They're going to hide their intentions until they get ready to do what they're doing, similar to what happened in the Navy Yard a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So Felix, are you seeing certain industries that get this, that understand this better than others? Can you make any broad statements about, like you mentioned, healthcare, for instance, or retail or government institutions? I mean, it's incredulous to someone like me and to a lot of us that somebody could go on a military installation, a base, and that's, I guess that's still workplace violence. It may be terrorism, but I guess you'd say that's still workplace violence, right?
Well, you still have people that need to know what their personal responsibilities are to minimize their risk. It may not necessarily be workplace violence as it relates to the soldiers and the military personnel that are there. Well, what about the civilians? Right. What about the civilians who are there? But I still submit to you, though, Rich, that even though it's a tough, sensitive argument to have, I think that they need to know what to do themselves.
Yeah, I mean, my point is that it's not either or necessarily. You can be,
yes,
you could brand it as terrorism, but at the same time, it's like when someone commits a hate crime. It's still a violent act, but by putting a hate crime statute into it, it has other application.
Absolutely.
So that's
absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to the movie theater, for example. I know the push is going to be, why don't we do countermeasures? Why don't we do things to reduce those risks? Okay, well, try to sell that notion to the movie owners who are already losing guests, if you would, or moviegoers to their establishments. I mean, look, I saw a statistic today, 2014, dropped by 6%. Let me show you what 6% equals. 1.26 billion people stopped going to the movies.
Wow.
I mean, is that ridiculous?
Yeah.
Or actually, is that billion or is that dollars? That's probably dollars.
Yeah.
They lost money in 2014 by that 6% factor. And I want to make sure I get that correct. They're struggling as it is. And now we want them to buy metal detectors. You know what happened following September 11th? Everybody was responsive and everybody wanted to reduce their risk. So they went out and did those things. But then when the risk went away, they went back to business as usual.
Let me follow up with that. That's a great point, because I actually lived and worked in New York City during 9/11 and the immediate aftermath for a few years. And I saw that. I mean, I definitely saw you go into a company on Park Avenue, let's say, and they had the whole X-ray machine, the metal detectors. What have you seen change since 9/11? I mean, I know it's related to this.
A lot's changed. I mean, people have gotten smarter. The physical security side of the house has gotten wiser. And they're very responsive to physical security access and visitor management. So those things have really gotten stronger for people coming in. You really can't do anything for someone that's already there. But in terms of managing the visitors, it's gotten really high tech and it's gotten performance based. And so therefore, it's harder for me to penetrate their security unless I'm an expert.
Right.
I want to pat them on the back. A lot's been done. And those serious security directors and HR directors who collaborate and communicate about the risk and discuss the threats, they're doing a great job in the larger companies, perhaps. I still think they cut corners when it comes to workplace violence prevention training, because they feel that once you've had it, you retain the information. And I say it's like muscle memory. You know, you only retain the information as long as it's in front of you. And you're getting annual training to the content, relative to the content.
Yeah, let me ask you another question. You know, we're talking about these some of these warning signs, because I know you're so good on the psychology of it too. What role does like bullying, play a role in some of these incidents that escalate? I've read that bullying is an issue in some places, and discrimination. How does that rise to a violent workplace incident? Have you seen that?
I've seen that. I had a situation when I was a postal inspector where a young lady who had a problem at home, and she was the victim of domestic violence at home, and she could not get her partner to take his responsibility with the children. And she came to the workplace and got the blessing of her immediate boss, who said, "You can come in 15 minutes later and leave 15 minutes earlier. Don't worry about it. I'll make sure that the bosses, know what's going on." And that worked well for her until there was a change of supervisors. And this guy began harassing her by saying to her very clearly, "I don't care what kind of problems you have at home. When you come to work, you come to work, and you come to work on time." Well, eventually that escalated into a verbal confrontation. She was the victim of his abuse, right? It escalated to a point of verbal confrontation. She got angry and she threatens to kill him. Wow. Of course, it's very complicated because now she becomes the perpetrator. She was the victim and she's the victim at home, but now she becomes the perpetrator. Bullying in the other context is very serious and complex, because the victim wakes up one morning and says, "Richie, I'm not taking your CRAP nor your sugar, honey, ice, and tea anymore from you. And when I come to work, if you bother me, Richie, I'm going to pick up something and knock you over the head." That's the problem with bullying. Or, "Mr. Supervisor, I know what you're doing to me. I know you're changing my shift on purpose. I know you're denying my leave on purpose. I know you're not letting me take my swing when I want to. Guess what? You're harassing me. And today I'm not going to take it anymore." That's why it's so complex. And that's why it's prone to rise to a level of physical violence.
Those are excellent examples you just gave, and I think our audience will appreciate that, because those are real-world examples. I also imagine, Felix, that in today's economy, at least here in the States and probably other places, that people are being asked to work longer and harder than ever, and they're being stretched. And I wonder if there's any patterns that you've seen in your work and your research of any connection between that at all.
Not yet. It's probably out there, but my research hasn't shown anything that's concrete relative to that. But that's a very good point. Let's just assume that they're being mandated to work long hours.
Yeah. It used to be 8-hour shift, now it's a 12-hour shift, no extra pay and whatever.
Exactly. Do good for the organization and we'll compensate you somehow down the road. But what about his family life? What about the stress that we're creating on that employee's home life when the wife says, "I want you home. I need you to take your responsibility and share in the burden of running the home. Then there's that strife at home that gets translated emotionally into the workplace, right? Yeah. Co-worker resistance to one another begins to show, and people who are normally able to cope become stressed out because home life is affecting their workplace life. Then you have the supervisor who says, hey, Nater, I don't care what you got going. You better adapt and adjust and be here because I need you here. So it's a tug and pull. It's a tug and pull. It's very difficult. It's hard to imagine someone going through that, but I would imagine people are.
Yeah, very interesting stuff. Yeah. I also just wanted to touch on a few points on the communication side as we start to wrap up here. Today I was watching some of the news coverage of Tennessee, and I thought that there were two spokespeople that really stood out. One, I don't have the names in front of me, but one was from the fire department and the other was from the police department. They did a really good job of quickly getting to the microphones and telling the media that was gathered there what they knew, but also what they didn't know. And one thing that stuck with me was, guys, we're going to get you more information as soon as we develop it. We're going to get back to you. We're going to update you. They left with that, and this was excuse me, within the first hour or two of the incident. So I really commend them. This is what I do is teach people how to get before that microphone and talk intelligently and calmly in the midst of a crisis to your critical audiences, which today is everybody, because of the 24/7 news cycle, because we're in an instant news cycle, and because of social media. And I think that was really important. So for those of you out there who may work in government or first responders, this is really a good study to look at. I didn't see all the tape or all the interviews, but what I saw, and from what I saw, they did a really good job. And
excellent.
Yeah, really, really important to calm the waters. What I didn't see, and maybe I didn't tune in, is what I like to see and kind of hook this into is the people in charge of the movie theater. I was trying to find the owners. I didn't find it in time for the show. But for those of you out there who are business owners and you're, God forbid, faced with a situation like this, and your factory, your office, your shopping mall, your movie theater, your university, your college, your school is the destination for an incident like this, you want to be out there with those first responders. First of all, don't try to go it alone. What I always preach to my clients is teamwork. So, one of the things you could do long before something like this happens is make sure you have good relations with the local fire department, police department, and especially the hospitals, because you will need them. When these incidents happen, you will need to coordinate your communications as much as possible, and that will protect your reputation over the long term. You can't bury your head in the sand. And certainly the basic thing you need to do in a situation like this is get out a statement within the first, as fast as you can. And even if you just use your Twitter account or your Facebook account to say, we're aware of this incident, there were victims, our hearts and prayers go out to the victims and the families, and we're cooperating with law enforcement to find out what happened, and we'll update you in a few hours. Even if you just say that, you'll be way ahead of what a lot of institutions don't do today. So make sure you get out quickly. You really need to do that today. The public expects that. If you're a public company, your shareholders expect that. It's just very basic information to get out and let people know that you have it under control. So I just wanted to handle that, crisis communications component of the show, because I think it's very important, as well as the things that you've talked about as well, Felix. So
no, it's critical. And that upfront attitude, if you would, that leadership role translates to a calm workforce that says, my boss cares about me. My boss is on top of me. Yeah,
because one of the critical audiences I talk about, Felix, and thank you for that reminder, by the way, is your employees. You and I agree. We've said this before, that your employees are your ambassadors to the world, to the public, and if they're happy and if you're showing that compassion and that understanding of their situation in situations like this, they will have your back when you need it, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I wanted to wrap up the show just by letting people know how they get hold of you, Felix. You work out of North Carolina and Long Island, but also globally, I know. So how should people reach you?
Best number, save them a couple of pennies, is my toll-free number, 1-877-825-8101, or reach me right through my website and go to my contact page and contact me that way with their particular issues. But the toll-free number is the best. That rolls right to my businesses and also to my cell phone.
Excellent.
Yeah, send me an email at info@naterassociates.com as well.
Yeah, and I just want to add one more thing because you have an incredible following on Twitter. I think you have. Let me tell you how many people you have following you.
Yeah,
it's really impressive. It's at Felix Nater, by the way, for those of you watching. At Felix Nater, follow him on Twitter. Every day, Felix has really pearls of wisdom about a lot of the things we talked about and so much more. 12.4 thousand followers. Wow, that's impressive. That's really impressive.
Well, thank you, Rich.
Great community you've built up over the years. Congratulations. So, he's a business advisor, workplace violence, workplace security, strategy, just great stuff all around. So I always learn from you. So thank you for your help today on the show and giving us some insights. And again, for those of you watching out there, workplace violence is something that you might not think about, much like, managing your reputation. These are things you need to think about. Felix and I have a lot in common, even though we do different things. But our concern is that people call Felix and call me at the 11th hour after something's happened, right? So we want you to give us a call long before something happens, so we can help you prepare for the worst. That's what this is about. It's about prevention on all sides. So keep that in mind. And I just want to put out just a quick note. If you go to Rich Klein Crisis, that's my website, and this is our 106th episode of the Crisis Show. We have started the process of converting most of the shows into audio-only format, which we were told people were interested in. So we started doing that, and we now have about 20 episodes on our website that you can download. And because I wasn't paying attention, we had a sale about a month ago at 99 cents. I forgot to put it back, so I'm going to leave it up there. If you want to download any of our shows that are up there, most of them are 99 cents. Some of the longer episodes that go on for like an hour and a half are $2.99, still a bargain. But also on that page at richkleincrisis.com, you will see from back in February 2013, a great episode that I did with Felix as an example on workplace violence. So the bonus to watching tonight is that you'll know about this other episode and many others that we've done together on this subject. So check out Rich Klein Crisis and check out naterassociates.com. So you'll have the synergy of both our thinking on this. So Felix, thank you so much, as usual. And we'll talk soon. Thank you so much to our audience. Thank you so much for watching. And we hope you're all enjoying the summer. We'll talk soon. Have a good night.
Okay. God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.